Well, if that isn't official, I don't know what is. Welcome on in. It's a solo edition of the High Hopes podcast because James Seltzer is dealing with a little bit of a sickness. So, I mean, it's physically impossible for me to see the boys, down at spring training. You're starting to see mitts popping, pitchers and catchers reporting, big signings, including David Buchanan and Spencer Turnbull. And just not, I wanted to do a podcast Friday night, I've been ready to do a podcast for about a week now. So excited to do this. If you missed the little tease on Twitter, get your questions in for the YouTube mailbag, and I'll go through and Tucker, producing the program tonight, he will bring up what he thinks are the best ones. So I appreciate everyone hanging out. Obviously the High Hopes podcast, as always, presented by Miller Lite. Rate, review, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and let's download this thing because the Phillies are back. And it's been a sort of a slow, boring ass winter, but it's so, and how last year ended. I was kind of thinking about this year, and I don't know if it comes through as very apparent, but I defend the Phillies a lot, and I get very protective of the Phillies. And I felt like when they lost games 6 and 7 to the Diamondbacks, it was like, great, now they're gonna have the you gotta get to the World Series, or this whole thing's a waste of time, like kind of where the fan base was at. I remember early 2000s, same thing with the Eagles. It was like, get to the World Series or get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl or bust. We're kind of there with the Sixers right now. I think we got there in 11 with the Phillies when they compiled that team, and it was a lot of just like super, super, super high expectations. And listen, expectations are good. I'd rather have expectations than no expectations. But my natural instinct, I guess, is to always protect them. And the nice part about this week and kind of just talking to people both on the air, on Twitter, is it just seems like there's a general excitement to have the Phillies back. It's not like, who cares? These guys are in camp. They lost games 6 and 7, which I think is just a really annoying portion of the fan base. Like, sure, there's going to be that. But it feels like people are just genuinely excited to have them back. And the nice part about this team is that, like, obviously the connection between 07 to 11 is something that it's really hard to replicate. Like, you had all-time players, you had some Hall of Famers, some close to Hall of Famers, guys that we grew up with, and the connection there was special. But I think that this team, given what they've done the last two postseasons, has gotten to the point where it's like they kind of just put a smile on your face, and you see them back and going through workouts again, and they put on the awful Fanatics jerseys, which is just like, how is this so bad? Like, what? How did it go from something so simple to something so bad? Like, they look like replica jerseys. They don't look like Major League Baseball jerseys. It's atrocious, and I know that's a consensus take, but it's just, it's so bad. It's so bad. But it feels like there's a genuine excitement. And I was wondering what the buzz was going to be heading into spring training, because they didn't really make any major moves. That's disappointing. I mean, I am in two camps. Like, one camp, very, very excited they're back and can't wait for the first spring training game. Can't wait for all that stuff. I mean, we're about like 10 days away. No, we're like 17 days away from the whatever. Late February is the first spring training game, and I can't wait. On the other hand, I would have liked a bigger move. Now they do have a chance here to make a bigger move, and there's been some stuff out there that the Phillies will sign one of these guys if they're willing to take a 1 or 2 year deal. The Jordan Montgomerys of the world. I think I'm in the camp of Jordan Montgomery over Blake Snell, just in the standpoint of wouldn't have to give up a draft pick. But, like the Jordan Montgomery, Blake Snell. The Bellinger thing still feels like a bit of a reach. I'm sure there's some mailbag questions about that. But still, I think that there's one I think there's two moves that they have left. I think they'll make a move for a reliever, and I think they'll make a move for a bench bat, or a guy that can possibly start. But either way, it's good to see the boys back. It's good to see a lot of smiles in camp. It's good hearing Rob Thompson talk again. I think a baseball manager is so different than almost any other sport because it's such a long season, and I feel like you have to have a certain demeanor, and you got to kind of be quick-witted. And it's not like a football coach where it's a lot of rah-rah, or a basketball coach is kind of rah-rah. It's like, we're here, we're going to do our thing. But he has a quiet confidence about Rob Thompson, which I always appreciate. I feel like Rob Thompson exudes a lot of confidence. So it's a solo high hopes as we wait for Seltzer to get back. I feel like, the last one I did of these was the Aiden Miller reaction podcast. Before that, I'm pretty sure the last time I did a solo high hopes was, I think it might have been after the Nola start against the Red Sox, and I just had to talk about it. And I believe the comp that night, and if you are like a throwback high hopes listener, like, we had some pretty crazy comps back in the day. Like, some just didn't age well. But listen, we were bold, and we were happy, and we just loved talking about the Phils. But I believe I compared Aaron Nola to Pedro Martinez. Maybe not, but still a very good pitcher, and is going to be a Philly for life. So I'm excited to get into it. Again, get your questions in, and Tucker will go through, and he will find the best ones. But I want to go through some of the biggest spring training stuff that has happened so far. Yesterday, Wheeler talked contract extension, and made it very clear he wants to be here, and talked about, like, he doesn't need to break the bank, but wants to be paid market value, and that's perfectly fine. Been some stuff floating around about $40 million a year he's asking for. Kind of feels like we are like the two sides are clear. We know how the Phillies operate. The Phillies will spread it out, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to go like 5-6 years, frankly. I know that might be like sticker shock because he's a 34-year-old pitcher. He's going to be 34 in the season. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're thinking more 5-6 years down the line, maybe $30 million a year. I think $30 million is the absolute lowest they would go. But we know how they like to operate, so you spread that out. Or what Wheeler's probably looking for, maybe 3 years at $40 million AAV, and try to, have the most amount of money possible for the next 3 years. So I assume that they're probably going to just meet in the middle, and maybe it's like a 4-year deal where it's like $35 million per year, and both kind of get what they want. But like, it's weird because I feel like I got this way with Nola, and it was a mistake on my part, where I was like, they'll get it done. They're not going to let Aaron Nola hit free agency. Like, not worried at all. They seem like they're on very good terms. It's not like it's getting nasty. Stuff's being leaked to the public. And the Phillies ended up not signing him before the season. He actually hit free agency. So I'm trying not to get trapped in that way again. But it's been too positive for me to think anything else than they're going to get it done. They said they're working. They representatives from both teams, I guess both sides, have started dialogue on a extension. So I don't really have my antennas super high on it. The Aaron Nola thing last year is definitely make me not worry about it, but it's making me think about it a little bit. So very good stuff from Zach Wheeler. And I know when we talk about paying pitchers and we talk about, oh my God, well, they're going to pay a guy until he's 37, 38 years old. And that could be kind of jarring. We have talked a good amount on this podcast throughout the offseason where, yeah, I get it. But like, Wheeler seems like he has one of those arms that does age well. For every DeGrom to where it doesn't seem like he can stay healthy, or you see these guys like Felix Hernandez or whoever go from like 98 to 93 in the blink of an eye. all of a sudden they're basically out of the league, and they're only just pitching. Like, I remember Jared Weaver, dude. There was no one easier to bet against in the world than Jared Weaver towards the end. Like, it just completely fell off. But Wheeler, I think he just reminds me more of I'm not saying he's as good as these guys, but he's up there, of the Verlander Scherzer arms, where sure the velocity might be down to 95, but still has the giddy up, can still get it past guys. It's still it graded out last year as one of the best fastballs in the sport, and he was losing velocity on it. So sure, we had those weird. Remember that stretch where he pitched against the Nationals like 2 times in a month, and for some reason they just ripped them. Like, there was more of that last year than, I think in years prior. But when it came down to it, I mean, he was unbelievable in the postseason. He's ridiculous in the postseason. And for as much as I think we rightfully so romanticize, obviously Hamels in 08, we won't talk about 09, 10, 11, and Halladay, unbelievable. We know that. Like, what? And Cliff Lee, of course, in 09, but 11 kind of taints it a little bit. But what Wheeler's done the last 2 postseasons is right up there with those guys, and I feel like those guys generate so much more buzz. Either way, Zach Wheeler extension, not too worried about it, but definitely something to monitor. Marsh, out of nowhere, all of a sudden it's like, well, he needs knee surgery. It's like, well, I don't know why we had to wait until now. He said he might have hurt it against the Reds last year. Could we have gotten that done, I don't know, like after the season? But he hopes to make opening day. He says he's going to make opening day. That's fine. My only concern there is that the amount of bats that he has leading up to that. Is he in like minor league camps? Does he make the end of spring training? Of course, the part of my brain, the little Negadelphian, is like, oh, great, so he's going to get off to a slow start because he's not going to see any live pitching. This makes me feel like they need to go get, and I think they will, but another bat. And I'm sure there's mailbag questions about it, but like Whit Merrifield is someone who does make a ton of sense. It looks like he's going to make a decision this weekend. I wonder how much he's concerned about playing time versus trying to get a ring. Apparently, there's like 5 teams involved, I believe, was the Morosi report. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Merrifield. I think he would be a really solid addition. You're not getting the Whit Merrifield of a couple of years ago. He was still an all-star last year, which I was surprised when I looked at his baseball reference. I was like, hold on, Whit Merrifield was an all-star. You're not getting the same player that was out in Kansas City, but you're getting a good player. You're getting the maxed out kind of kingery. And the nice part, he can play infield if needed. He could play center field if needed. So let's say Marsh comes back, he's fine. You can play him in center field if Rojas struggles. I'm all fine with Rojas going out there, starting game 1, opening day, and giving him runway. We don't need to pull the plug 2 weeks in. But we've talked about, they tried this a couple years ago with the Hazley, Moniak, Muzziotti, like that level of center field. Now, Rojas will always provide value with the glove because the glove is special. But, can he hit enough? And that's always going to be the question with Johan Rojas. We can survive at 220, 230. Can't survive at 150. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's essentially a pitcher batting ninth, which bring it back. But I think the Marsh injury, the possibility of maybe missing opening day or at least starting slow, not needing to run him into the ground fresh off a knee surgery, go get a bat. Merrifield makes sense, can play left, can play center, can be a platoon bat, can play infield. Good. Kike Hernandez also comes to mind there. This guy is out there. I don't know how good he is anymore. It's probably a minor league deal, but Marwin Gonzalez can technically play every single position in the field. Can't hit anymore, but Marwin Gonzalez, Kike, Merrifield, if they go straight outfielder, I mean, do I really need to mention who I think they should sign? Yes, I think they should sign Adam Duvall, but we don't need to go back in and relitigate the Adam Duvall conversation. But yeah, that's something to monitor with the Marsh situation, and hopefully everything goes good. He's good for opening day. He can go out there and beat Brandon Marsh because, I guess the jump that he took last year hitting was really exciting. And I want to see if he can hit lefties. I was watching him in the cage, I guess, 2 weeks ago, facing a lefty guy. So clearly something he worked on, and they have a chance to have a really, really solid outfielder with him and Johan Rojas. Great to see Charlie at camp. I'm so happy. Like I remember when I saw the tweets about him having the stroke. It was like, we can't lose Charlie. And of course I think Alex Coffey tweeted him like right behind the batting cage. It's like, that's my guy. It's good to see. He's fine. He's doing better. And he's right back behind a batting cage. I wouldn't expect him anywhere else. And then two quick things here before we get to the mailbag. How about David Buchanan? It's just like, I remember David Buchanan. I feel like I'm one of the few people that remember vividly the David Buchanan run where it was like, oh, this guy is semi decent. Hey, knows how to pitch. Pitches backwards. Who cares if it's 90 to 91? Now he's the oldest player in Phillies camp. This is just, it's sickening. It's absolutely sickening how fast time flies. David Buchanan is the oldest player in Phillies camp. The notification that they had re-signed him, I swore it was a bit. I really did. Obviously, he was pitching over in Korea for the last couple of years. Pitched like a 3 ERA, which is obviously pretty good. I think last year it was down in the 2.5s. He was really fired up. I watched a quick clip of him. He's like, Ellis, and I'm here to win. I'm here to win. I was like, all right. I appreciate it. I don't know if we're relying on David Buchanan to help put us over the top, but listen, we'll see. I'm excited to see what he looks like. I hope there's a bit of a velo uptick. I'm sure there is. Things have changed a lot since 2015, and it's just hilarious looking at the last lineup that he was a part of. I think Altair was in it, and Kratz was in it, and Michael and Ruff, and just some names, man. We've been through the doldrums here. We've been through the doldrums of the 2012, 2013. I always sort of forget Michael Young was a Philly. Where they were hanging on. Even I remember, and I'm ashamed to admit it, but I was so excited that they signed AJ Burnett in 2014. It's like, oh, sweet, AJ Burnett. Loved him a decade ago, and yes, he ate the Phillies lunch in the 2009 World Series. But David Buchanan's back in camp, and he's the oldest player in Phillies camp at 34 years old. I mean, at least bring back some kind of grizzled veteran. 34 can't be the oldest player in camp. It's as simple as that. Cannot be the oldest player in camp. And the second one, yes, I could have done at least 45 minutes on Spencer Turnbull, but we will keep it semi-short and sweet. I'm very excited about Spencer Turnbull, and yes, you don't have to tell me, you don't have to show me his baseball reference from last year. I'm aware. I got it. I understand he was not good last year, but I think it takes a little while for guys off of Tommy John to I think everyone reacts to Tommy John differently. Some pitchers come back, like Verlander, who come back and win the Cy Young. And Tommy John comes back and they are throwing harder than ever, because that's all the kind of work that you put in on your arm. That's what happens sometimes with Tommy John. Some guys react differently. And could Spencer Turnbull be not good at all? Of course he could not be good at all. But it's the right kind of upside signing to where he can help you out of the back end. He can obviously make some spot starts. He has an option, so he's going to start the year at AAA. And the upside is legit upside. There's not no upside here. Now, last year, the biggest thing he's going to have to get back is obviously his velocity. I mean, his velocity was 93 last year. A couple of the clips that I was watching. Prime Spencer Turnbull, which is a kind of a funny sentence to say, but Prime Spencer Turnbull was 97 with 2-seam run, and he was just kind of figuring it out the last 2 years. I remember The first time I saw Spencer Turnbull was in a Phillies spring training game, and I was like, oh, I've never heard of this guy. They should do pretty well against him. And then he's like throwing 96-mile-an-hour two-seamers with like a hammer, slider, curveball combo. And I was like, okay, well, this guy's obviously could be something. I think that was the year he pitched to the 3.9, and then he had 2.80 ERA before he got hurt in 11 starts in 21 before needing Tommy John. It's the kind of signing that I think has a chance to really, really pay off. You're not spending any money. He has a minor league option, so you're not like kicking Christopher Sanchez out of the rotation. You have him in AAA. If his stuff is back and he's healthy, and I also like that the Phillies did bring in the former Tigers like head scout or someone in the Tigers organization, I believe last offseason, to where I feel like he has a pretty good gauge on who from the Tigers matter versus who doesn't. And the Tigers are not exactly the smartest organization when it comes to knowing how to develop pitchers or knowing how to get the most out of pitchers. So the Spencer Turnbull thing, you go from the Tigers, who I think are deficient when it comes to developing pitchers, to the Phillies, which have kind of turned into a bit of a lab here the last couple of years in getting the most out of guys. And there's legitimate upside there. There's legitimate upside. So I can't wait for spring training to start to watch from Spencer Turnbull. And I'm excited to see if that velocity is back up. Because if it's 96, it's 97, we might have something. And that's exciting. So I'm sure we'll get more into all of this with Seltzer when he gets back. I'm sure he's going to have to hear me drone on and on about Spencer Turnbull. I think last year his slider whiff percentage jumped from 13% in 21 to 19% in last year. So there's some things he has to iron out. But I also think that you have a good amount of rust coming off of Tommy John. Traditionally, command is like the last thing to come back. And like last year, I think he walked a career high in guys. So there will be more Spencer Turnbull breakdowns, and I can't wait to see him out there and see if he has some juice left. Because if he does, I really, really think they got a steal. All right, Tucker, it's time. Let's go through some of the YouTube comments or mailbag questions, and let's get into this thing. All right, Harry Walker. Talk about the cleanup spot. Everybody wants to talk about leadoff, but Bohm killed them in that spot. So the cleanup spot is very interesting because Rob Thompson said that he hasn't decided on his lineup yet. And I wonder if there's an internal conversation about Schwarber and where he feels most comfortable versus maybe a more traditional guy like Stott up there. And I think no matter what, it should be a lefty batting one. So whether it's Schwarber, whether it's Stott, I want one of those guys batting one and Turner to bat two. I think he's a really good two-hole hitter. And enough of the Harper batting cleanup thing. Like I want Harper batting third. I would like him batting in the first inning. I think that'd be beneficial. And I know that people soured on Bohm through the Diamondback series. It's just I don't know who else you put there. You could put Castellanos there if he's hot, but there's a lot of swing and miss that we've discussed at nauseum. You could put JT there, but like, is JT a cleanup hitter? I think in the playoffs he was really good. I think you can make the argument it was like their third best offensive player throughout the entire postseason. Like, just turned his game completely up once the postseason started. But I would be fine keeping Bohm there from the standpoint of I wish he could hit more home runs, and I get it. But I think what Bohm does well in that spot, where if you have guys in front of him, I still trust him in RBI spots, and I don't think he's going to strike out that much. So Castellanos, like power-wise and RBI, sure, but there is strikeout there. I think Bohm, runner on third, runner on second, less than 2 outs. I just trust him to get that guy home. And I'm interested to see what this year of Alec Bohm. is going to be like. Because last year, the whole thing was I always put on like 25 pounds or 20 pounds, whatever. Here comes the power surge. And there was a power surge. It was 20 home runs. Can we get to 25? Is he still ironing out his swing? Was he focused so much on defense that maybe the power will come this year? I don't know. But he's a good professional hitter. And I'm keeping him at the 4 spot. And if that's the lineup on opening day, you go Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Bohm, or Stott, Turner, Harper, Bohm, Schwarber. Not bad. So I'm keeping Bohm at the 4 spot. What's next? Jack, some rumors floating around about McKinley Moore being a trade candidate. What's his value? And who's the most realistic person to bring in a platoon, left bench? And yeah. By the way, just nailed reading that. Could not have nailed that anymore. That's from Jamie Haar. The McKinley Moore trade candidacy is pure high hopes. You know, that's why I love this podcast. So McKinley Moore is interesting. I mean, there's probably like no value for McKinley Moore, and it's such a shame too because in spring training of last year, I was like, wow, this guy kind of popped, and they brought him up for like one outing, and it was just not good at all. You know, like just all the kind of pop that you saw from his stuff in spring training, like the fastball, like 97, 98, like it was down to like 94. So they gave it a shot. Didn't work. If they lose him, they lose him. It's not going to keep me up at night. They've got enough guys coming through now with some legitimate power stuff. I'm excited to see what Ryan Burr has, you know, of all the like random free agent bullpen options they've signed. That could be the next Jeff Hoffman. By the way, changed his number to 23, which is a big development because, obviously that's Michael Jordan's number. I will say, Jeff Hoffman going to 23, that was the number when he wasn't very good. Should he have just stuck with the number that had him as one of the most dominant right-handed relievers of the sport? Maybe we should have kept that. As for the right-handed bench bat, I mean, there's Duvall. If you just want an outfielder that'll play good defense, can fill in center field and hit the home run. Merrifield, with Merrifield, it's just going to be interesting. Is he going to be guaranteed more playing time elsewhere? Is he going to want a starting spot? Like I still, in an ideal world, want an opening day where Rojas is in center and Marsh is in left. Now, the nice part about Merrifield is, you know, if you want to go lefty, you don't want to face Marsh against lefties, you can put Merrifield in there, it's fine. Or Rojas is struggling for a little bit, there's Merrifield. So I think he would still play a good amount. I don't think Whit Merrifield's coming here to play 40 games. But I just wonder if he's looking for a more defined role. But, man, I think it would be a really solid signing at this point. What's next? AJ Klein. With the Wheeler extension appearing imminent, how do you expect his fastball to age? Do you think Wheeler is the type of pitcher who can still be effective even if he tops at 93, 94? I mean, obviously I would like it to be more 95, 96, but I think he learned how to pitch there at this point, and it's such a heavy fastball that even at 93, 94, it's getting in on your hands, and it's like a bowling ball to where it's just so rare we see his fastball get squared up and hit for hard contact. Like it's still like there was times last year where he'd be 94, 95. And was it as dominant in the regular season? No. But when it got to the biggest games, he was fine. So like one of the biggest things I learned last year, because, you know, a little life advice. It's always important to keep learning. You know, just keep learning and growing and evolving. But, you know, one of the things I learned last year was don't freak out too much about the velocity. You know, it's still heavy. It's still pretty good. It's like 85%, 80% of full Zach Wheeler. But when it gets to the postseason, he turns it up a notch. And I think we're done with the days of 98, 99, 100 mile an hour Zach Wheeler. But it's so easy. It's free. There's not a lot of exertion to get it to 96, 97, to where I think it's going to age fine because it sounds weird, but he's not putting a ton of stress on his arm. Like his off-speed stuff I don't think are killing his arm. Like it's more that fastball. He rides that thing, and if guys square it up, they square it up, but he trusts that pitch. Some guys, they have to just like try to hammer down a curveball, and it kills their arms. But everything Wheeler does on the mound is free and easy, and it's relatively stress-free, and he's just blessed with one of those arms. So I said it earlier, but I think he has a Scherzer, a Verlander, that kind of arm more than the arm's going to die, and we can't extend him. I think it's going to be one of those fastballs that ages pretty well. And sure, Scherzer's breaking down right now, and it's not the same pitcher, but even at 39, 40, still pretty good. So I'm not that worried about Zach Wheeler stuff, and until he shows me in the postseason that it's really that big of a hindrance, I'm going to keep trusting him. What's next? From William Carroll. Will Johan Rojas have a better offensive career than Roman Quinn? They sport an identical ex-WOBA, and historically both have trouble staying healthy. Quinn actually has better minor league numbers. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a shame about Roman Quinn because there was something there, and I legitimately just think he was too fast. I think he was too fast for his body, and he could not stay healthy. I mean, Rojas hasn't really shown that. Rojas is fast, but I feel like he's built for it. Whereas like Roman was so fast that like I think he was too fast for his body. Johan Rojas and apparently all the stuff he's bulked up down there, which is exciting to see. Can't wait. I mean, I have questions. I think my biggest question about Johan Rojas is pitch recognition, and I think he got really exposed from that standpoint in the postseason, where teams I felt like just started sliding him to death, and he was starting to get a little jumpy. But we also have to remember, I mean, the guy was the minor league hitter of the year last year. He was in Double-A. He made the jump from Double-A to starting on a team that was one win away from the World Series. And yeah, it wasn't great in the postseason when it came to the bat. But if you bulk up, you find a way to make the swing a little bit more powerful. I thought it was a little bit flat at times last year. Apparently Kevin Long's just been working almost day and night with him. Seems prone, or seems like willing to be all in on putting in the work to figure it out at the plate, because like we talked about earlier, I mean, the defense is generational. We've been plagued here, like ever since Shane. We didn't really have very good defensive center fielders. And yeah, we went through like 5 years of Odubel. And Christian Pache was really a revelation when he first came up, but he couldn't really stay healthy, which is a shame. I'm curious to see what he looks like this year. Maybe they just think he could be the right-handed bench bat or outfield bat. But like, we just haven't seen the Johan Rojases of the world here very often. I mean, the older heads will be like, well, obviously, like Schmidt, we get it. Schmidt's unbelievable. But like, Rico Bronya was an unbelievable defensive player. Freddie Galvis was unbelievable. J-Roll, Roland. And it's just like Johan Rojas is, for my lifetime, the best. Now, I know people will say Gary Maddox, and I appreciate that. I never saw Gary Maddox, but this guy is special defensively. So I don't really see the injury concerns. Pache seems more injury prone than Johan Rojas, but I don't know. I'm excited to see what he can do this year, and if he can just stabilize that spot to where they don't have to go rush and get a center fielder in the trade market, and they can just play him and let him go, and he can hit just enough, because the defense is that special. They have something there, and hopefully the bat can come. What's next? McGable could be up this year, Ducky. We had Preston Mattingly on a couple months ago, and he acknowledged some of the struggles that McGable had last year. And the reality is he's still kind of growing into his body. He's 21. He's still in the development stage. And for every Andrew Painter prospect, and it sucks that he's hurt, for every Andrew Painter prospect, which is like not once in a lifetime, but you know what I mean. Like that's kind of special. There are times where players take a little bit longer to develop. I think maybe the new balls in AAA weren't exactly the best for him, but he's super talented. The stuff is still there. I think he was working through transitioning from being slider heavy to finding more of a curveball. Maybe that kind of threw him off. Still working on a changeup. Definitely not as much as his prospect status has probably fallen from a couple years ago. Definitely has fallen from a couple years ago. But in a perfect world, him, Griff, if we can get Griff back on track, him, Griff, Turnbull, and I guess David Buchanan. They're all kind of in the mix. Hopefully, they're all at AAA up at Lehigh. I would like to see both Griff and Nick start there, and maybe they can be in the mix if one of these guys go down. But he could be ready this year. They've been prone to fast track some of these guys. It's so funny because whenever you talk prospects on Twitter or anywhere else, you get the classic person that's like, Phillies will wait till he's 25 to bring him up. That's what they always do. No, it's not. It's not really true anymore to what the Phillies do. It could be in the mix this year, completely dependent upon how he's pitching. Obviously, injuries would have to happen, but I think there's a chance he could be up this year. What's next? Oh, Anthony Esbenson. What's happening, brother? Are we really sure Montgomery makes him a lot better? Sanchez was good last year and seems pretty sustainable. I think it's important for Sanchez to start game this year. Yeah, so if they get Jordan Montgomery, I'm moving off of Taiwan. I appreciate the comments about him working on getting his velocity up. And I appreciate the 170 innings that he threw last year. I don't think he's gonna be as bad as he was last year or average as he was last year. He did pitch in World Baseball Classic. If we're gonna give that excuse to the other guys, I think it does count for Taiwan. Fair is fair. But I'm signing Jordan Montgomery, and then I'd be finding a home for Taiwan Walker. It's interesting. Seems like from kind of what I've heard, it's not as bad of a contract, I think, as it's kind of viewed here around the league. Innings are valuable. So the question then is okay, Jordan Montgomery, that's 3 straight lefties at the back end. I mean, obviously you want to get if you're super worried about that, I guess you could have Ranger start game 2, or you could have Montgomery start game 2, Nola game 3, and Ranger game 4. I guess it comes down to also in the postseason. I think Jordan Montgomery, even when at South Carolina, and when he started coming up with the Yankees, he always just reminded me of Pettit. And maybe it was the Yankee pinstripe, maybe because I wore 47. But just always had that kind of big game feel to him, where never got too high, never got too low. It's kind of how Ranger is, And Ranger's been really good the last 2 postseasons. I would love to have a Ranger, start to finish kind of solid year, because I think it's interesting in fantasy baseball, and I know it's not like the end all be all, but I play in pretty competitive leagues. He's always available, and I feel like he's always pretty good. Now, maybe because strikeout wise, he doesn't exactly pop, but he's also been super reliable and super, good in the postseason. And you're adding another arm in there where maybe they could view it as, okay, well, now we can use Ranger out of the bullpen. But, I think going from Taiwan to Jordan Montgomery, and it gives you a 5 of Wheeler, Montgomery, Nola, Ranger, Chris Sanchez. I mean, that's a pretty nasty 5. And I would prefer Jordan Montgomery to Snell, just from the standpoint of the qualifying offer stuff and not having to give up a draft pick. Obviously, if they sign Snell, the upside is pretty stupid. It's probably a higher upside, whereas Jordan Montgomery raises their floor. But yeah, I in a perfect world, I am signing Jordan Montgomery. I'm getting off of Taiwan, and we'll see if it would be for a 1 or a 2 year deal. The nice part about that is if they even go 2 years, we could be talking about a rotation heading into next year with Wheeler, Montgomery, Nola, Ranger, Painter. Fast forward to 2025 for all I care. But I don't know. I would sign Montgomery and then get off Taiwan Walker. What's next? Drew Ballas, Drew in Westchester. Do you think Nola's opening day starter over Wheeler based on contract and precedent? And he does comment that J-Lo and A-Rod was real. On the afternoon show today, we did celebrity run-ins. And apparently Drew is in a 20-team fantasy baseball league, and they're drafting for 10 hours in the Hamptons. And at the end of it, A-Rod and J-Lo walked in, which I'm starting to believe more and more. You guys were just delusional by that point because you were looking at draft boards for 10 hours, and it's like, oh my God, there's A-Rod and J-Lo as you're going crazy looking at picking, I don't know at that point, the bottom of the barrel. So no, I still don't believe the J-Lo and A-Rod story. Nola opening day starter. I think they view that as it's a cool thing to set the record for the most amount of opening day starts. I would still do it. I think last year though, I think Wheeler was a little bit slowed up at the end of spring training, so it kind of worked its way out. But ultimately, it's not a huge deal. It's kind of cool seeing Nola start every opening day, and it certainly beats the Jeremy Hellickson run that was 2014 to 2016 or 2015 and 2016. I don't know. Either way, the Jeremy Hellickson run was not the dark period of Phillies baseball. But I'd give it to Knowles. I'd give it to Knowles. What's next? Matt Alberson, who will be the utility infielder once camp breaks? Scott Kingery is my answer. No. Although I did have a dream about Scott Kingery saving the season. So I think someone was ready for pitchers and catchers. It'll be Edmundo, and that's good. I love Edmundo. Really good defensive player. Made some weird errors at third base last year, I remember. And it's that can't happen. Started to find some pop late. I thought at the beginning of the year he was a little bit slow at the plate, but I think he kind of heated up as we went along. So I think it'll be Edmundo. If you sign Whit Merrifield, the nice part is that he can play all over the diamond too and the outfield. So having again last year, one of the things that I would have loved to have had heading into the postseason, it just didn't happen. And by the way, I can't do the Jake Cave thing again, but he's probably going to be there. But one of the things that in the posting I felt like they needed was just an experienced bench bat that knows that spot and knows how to perform in those instances. And that's where a guy like Whit Merrifield, I think, would come and really help out. Plus, he would become the oldest player in camp, so we don't have to deal with the David Buchanan thing. And even Whit Merrifield being 35. When did everyone get so old? When did everyone just decide, hey, we're going to speed this whole thing up? Again, because I don't think 2021 to now, I feel like it's the exact same. Nothing's really changed. It's all the exact same. There hasn't been anything that has happened in the last 3 years. We're all just in the same spot, except technically getting older. What's next? Luke, my guy, Luke Orcani. Do you think Kirkering needs to throw the sinker more? Sweeper sinker was around an 85-15. I'm surprised it was even 15. I thought it was 95-5 maybe. Yeah, I think. I feel like with Kirkering, I wonder if his fastball is graded out poorly and they're worried about it getting exposed. So they try to throw the slider a ton. Because traditionally, growing up, it's I have 98 in my back pocket. I'm not even going to throw anything else. And as you get older and you get into Major League Baseball, these guys study velocity. 98 is not, it doesn't really matter. Frankly, it just doesn't matter if you throw 98. It has to move. You have to dot it. You can't have flat 98 because flat 98 is getting put into the seats. So my hope there with Kirkering is they figured out something, whether they want to use the Repsodo cameras, slow motion cameras, and maybe figured out, okay, you have 98, but let's try 96 with some dive to it. and get guys off the barrel because he was so predictable last year by throwing the slider over and over again. And if you throw that pitch over and over and over again, major league hitters are going to hit it. I also wonder, like, he has the mechanics to where I think he could learn a pretty good changeup, to just have something off those pitches. Now, we're talking about adding a lot of pitches to a reliever, but if he, like, let's say his fastball is something they're afraid of and it's something that he can't find more movement on and it just doesn't work. I feel like the changeup at least is some kind of equalizer to where we're not just throwing the slider over and over and over and over again. Because if he just had something to hide the slider, he's ridiculous. Like, because the slider's really, really good. If he has a changeup to hide the fastball at 98, then he can have the fastball surprise people. And I don't know, a slider, not a slider, a changeup or a splitter or something of that ilk. I think his mechanics lend itself to be able to throw that pitch. He has pretty smooth mechanics. It looks like it would come out of his arm pretty well. If he could learn a third pitch, which I know that we traditionally don't ask our relievers to do, but if he could, it'd be an absolute game changer. So sinker, I hope they figure out something there. If it's still not grading out very well and guys are able to square it up, even if it's 98, I would like to see either a changeup or a splitter. What's next? Ross Shoemate. Does Stott bat 300 this year? I hope so. I mean, he ended last year in the 280s. He was over 300 for a good little stretch there. I mean, he went from 230s his rookie year to up to the 280s. And if he didn't, like, basically not get a hit the last 2 weeks of the season, he would have been close. So I'll say 294 is the floor for Stott. But I more wonder, like, are we going to get I don't know, 320 year from Stott one of these years where it's just hitting everything? I think, so someone actually messaged me this the other day because I've been looking for my new David Bell bit because obviously JT Realmuto ended the David Bell bit. But I think O'Doable holds their longest hitting streak, their current longest hitting streak. And I think it's like 21 games. So that's the next thing that I would like to come down. So hopefully Stott can take that down. I mean, listen, Rollins had a long streak. Utley had a long streak. Rollins was, through 2 seasons. So this doesn't even really count. But I would like to see one of those, like, imagine May, June, season starts kind of slowing down, but there's like a Stott hit streak going. He can do it. I mean, he can 100% do it. So, I think Stott flirts with 300, and I just wonder if we're going to get one of those 315, 320 years. Like, if we could get Turner to, I don't know, if we can have a 295 to 300 Turner, 295 to 300 Stott, that's pretty damn good, I know the sport's trending towards lower batting averages. I'm still of the mindset that batting average does matter. All right, Sucker, what do you think? Like two more of these mailbag questions. Colin Hess, do we get a vintage Bryce season with him fully healthy? I would, man. Just I know he won the MVP in 21, and not to take it away from him, but it's like, what's like the memorable Bryce moment from that run? I mean, like the comeback against the Cubs where he had a hit late and that kind of sealed it for him. The team didn't make the playoffs, It's great. I'm glad he won an MVP. When he's in the Hall of Fame, it's going to be great. But like a peak Harper, can we get a 40 burger from Bryce this year? A 40 burger, 285, 120, but a nice 40 burger home run season from Bryce. Because listen, we need to get on pace for 500. I mean, he's kind of on pace for 500. He should get to 500. He'll get to 500, right? He's gonna get to 500. If he doesn't get the 500, something probably went wrong. But it'd be easier if we could knock out like 40 of them this year. So, yeah, I think he has it in him. I just would love to see what a fully healthy Bryce season does, because the last time he did it, he won MVP. So I'm excited for first base. I can't wait to see his evolution there. Like the fact that, again, he pretty much learned it on the fly and was really solid over there. Like, for a guy who never played the position, imagine what he can do with an offseason over there. And it's going to be so refreshing. You got plus defender behind the plate. You got a plus defender at first base. You got a plus defender at second base. Turner, 26 errors last year. Not great. But hopefully he can just bounce back and not be, a bad defensive shortstop. You have him there. Bohm is still average at best, but Marsh, super in left, plus. Rojas, plus in center. And Castellanos, fine. Serviceable. Like, all of a sudden, a couple years ago, where I was like, wow, it's the worst defense I've ever seen, turns into a pretty good defense. So, I can't wait to see a full season of Bryce. Hopefully he can just stay healthy. No more freaking inside fastballs that he's turning into and breaking a hand or, God forbid, a face, bone in his whatever. Like, just give me a fully healthy Bryce season on our trek to 500 home runs. All right, Tucker, last one. Joseph Semet. Does Trout at deadline put us over the top? What a perfect ender. Mike, you got one more shot. Simple as that. We're never. You got one more shot, and if you want to stay in Anaheim, Los Angeles, whatever you want to call it, and waste the rest of your career, it's fine. But when the Phils are 10 games over 500 at the deadline, they're competing with the Braves, and you got a chance, right? You got a chance to come home and help put this team over the top. Like, hopefully you're healthy. Hopefully you're going off. Maybe the Angels are like, oh, we can get so much for him now. Whatever. It's right there. So, it's a shame we couldn't even get like a little bit out of the Trout stuff this offseason. Would have been fun. The Angels had to be complete losers and shut it down from like day one. No fun. I mean, we'll see. He probably never asks out, and it'd be a shame. He might just end his career in Anaheim. But hey, I saw he was down at Trout National, so maybe he wants to get closer to his golf course. I don't know. But man, it would be a lot of fun ramping up to the trade deadline, and the Angels are like, listen, we'll listen on Mike Trout, and if the Phillies have a chance to go get him, no idea. But it was certainly fun. Either way, can't believe this was 52 minutes. Tucker, I'm sorry in advance that it was so long. But thanks for everyone for chiming in. Thanks for all the questions. I'm sorry if we did not get to you. But either way, appreciate you hanging out. I know it's a solo pod. I know it's just my voice for 52 minutes. So I'm sorry in advance for that. But, man, I'm just excited to talk Phil's baseball. And hopefully James gets better soon. And we'll be back next week. Or, God forbid, an emergency pod. I'll be right on here doing this solo again because I don't care. It's Phil season. They're back. And all the Phillies content throughout the day just couldn't make me happier. So for Tucker Bagley producing behind the scenes here, and Jack Fritz, myself, this has been another edition of the High Hopes Podcast.